Amara Ikeji folded the collar 3 times before she let herself believe it was straight. At 14 minutes past 10 on a Thursday night, inside a storage unit that was never supposed to have a mattress in it at all. Unit 214, Hanul Storage and Logistics, Yongdong-pogu. 210,000 won a month, paid in cash, for a space the size of a parking spot, stacked with cardboard on 3 sides and a futon on the 4th. Kimmy was 9 and asleep with her arm over Toby, who was 6 and snored like their father used to. Zuri was 3 and did not count as a person for rent purposes, which was the only mercy in any of this. Amara pressed the travel iron flat against the collar one more time, though the shirt did not need it. Though nothing in that unit needed anything except air and a lock that worked. She folded it. Once, twice, a third time, the way her mother-in-law back in Enugu had shown her, though it had been 14 months since anyone had shown her anything. The door was not supposed to open at 10:14 at night. It did. A man stood in it, tall, coat too clean for a storage corridor, a phone still lit in his hand like he'd forgotten it was there. He did not say what she expected. "You can't be in here. This is a violation. I'm calling someone." "Don't stop," he said instead. Quiet, almost in order, almost not one. It was not the mattress that stopped him mid-sentence. It was not the extension cord running under the door like a vein that shouldn't exist. It was the fold. 3 creases, exact, on a 6-year-old school collar at 10 at night in a box with no future in it. He did not know yet whose voice that reminded him of. He would not know for 6 more weeks. But something in his chest had already sat down without asking permission. "I'm not," Amara started, and stopped because there was no sentence that ended anywhere good. "I know," he said. He didn't. Not yet. He backed out, and the door clicked, and she stood there with the iron still warm in her hand and her heart going like she'd run somewhere. 19 days earlier, none of this had a name yet. 19 days earlier, Amara Ikeji was still telling herself the arrangement with Mr. Go was temporary. The way she'd been telling herself that for 6 weeks, which was long enough that the word had stopped meaning anything. 6 weeks since the landlord on Achasan Row had changed the locks on a Tuesday while she was at the dry cleaners picking up hemming work. 6 weeks since 340,000 won in back rent had turned into a number too large to argue with. 6 weeks since a security guard had watched her carry 2 duffel bags and a folding chair down 4 flights and had the decency not to help and not to look away either. 14 months since Daniel. 14 months since a Wednesday morning at the Back Gen Tower 2 site in Mapo. Since a scaffold plank rated for a different weight class than the 6 men standing on it. Since a phone call that started with Mrs. Ikeji. "I need you to sit down," and ended with her not remembering how she'd gotten to the hospital at all. The company had called it a settlement. 46 million won, the paper said, though the paper was not the number that ever reached her hands. What reached her hands after processing fees and a broker fee and a translation fee nobody had asked her to pay for was 3,100,000 won. Enough for 4 months of an apartment she could no longer afford after that. And then, not even that. She kept the real number folded inside a powder blue biscuit tin with a dent in the lid, the same tin she was counting from now. At the edge of the futon, careful not to let the coins clink loud enough to wake anyone. 438,001. She needed 1,300,000 for the deposit on a one-room officetel that would let her put her children's names on a lease again, somewhere with a door that locked from the inside and not the outside. Mama Kimmy's voice, small from the dark. Is the iron loud? No, baby. Go back to sleep. Okay. A pause. Mama, do storage units get addresses? Amara did not answer that one. She put the coins back in the tin, closed the dented lid, and turned off the iron. Her sister Ngozi called at 11, the way she did every night from Houston, 3 hours behind, and worried sick in a way she tried to keep light. You eat today? I ate. Amara, I ate. Ngozi, stop. You know I would send more if I know. She did know. Ngozi had 2 kids of her own and a nursing shift that started at 5 in the morning. I'm not asking you for more. I need 4 months. That's all. 4 months of putting away, and I'm out of this place and into somewhere with my name on the door. And if the storage people find out first? Amara looked at the door, at the lock that only worked from one side. They haven't yet, she said, and hung up before her voice could do the thing it wanted to do. Down the hall, past the loading dock, Mr. Go was locking up his little office, 71 years old, and tired in the specific way of a man who has decided not to see certain things. He'd let 3 families live quietly in units on the 2nd floor for almost a year now, on the understanding that nobody said anything and nobody left candles burning. He liked Amara. He liked that her children were quiet and that she always paid the storage fee on the first, even the months it clearly cost her something to do it. New owners' people came through the books again today. He told her when she passed him in the corridor, not meeting her eyes exactly. Corporate audit. Somebody upstairs is asking why vacancy numbers don't match the electricity bill. Is that bad? I don't know yet, Mr. Go said, which was the most honest thing anyone had told her in 6 weeks, and somehow that made it worse. Baek Sung-ho did not remember agreeing to walk 17 storage facilities in 1 week, but he had signed off on the audit himself, and Baek Sung-ho did not send other men to clean up messes he'd caused by not looking closely enough the first time. That habit had cost him before. It would cost him again, though he did not know that yet, standing in his glass office on the 41st floor of Baekjin Tower 1 at 9 in the evening, staring at a spreadsheet that did not add up by 14 units of electricity usage nobody could explain. Executive Ha says it's clerical, said Ominji, his secretary of 9 years, setting a folder on his desk without being asked. He says don't waste your night on it. Executive Ha says a lot of things are clerical. You're going yourself. I'm going myself. Minji did not argue. In 9 years, she had learned exactly which sentences of his were doors and which were walls, and that one, quiet as it was, had the weight of a door closing behind it already. He took the car alone, told the driver to wait at the corner, walked the last block on foot, past a noodle cart closing for the night, past a woman locking a storage office who looked at him like she recognized money before she recognized a face. Corporate, Mr. Go said, more statement than question, straightening up out of a stoop that had cost him 30 years of standing over invoice books. Just looking, Sung-ho said, which was true and would stop being true in about 4 minutes, in a corridor that smelled like cardboard and someone's dinner, in front of a door with light bleeding out from under it, at a time of night no storage unit had business being lit. He should have walked past it. He had 17 buildings and 1 week and a board meeting at 7 the next morning about numbers far larger than whatever was behind that particular door. He put his hand on it instead. Ha Jong-soo had a phrase he liked to use in meetings, and he used it again the next morning at 7, tapping a pen against a printout of occupancy anomalies. Unauthorized residential exposure, he called it, like the words themselves could make 3 families in a storage building sound like a line item and not people. We have 11 days until the road show. I'd like this resolved quietly before then. Sung-ho did not answer right away. He was thinking about a fold in a 6-year-old's collar and about his mother's hands doing the same motion 26 years ago in a laundry room that smelled like starch and exhaustion, and about how he had not slept well, and about how he did not understand yet why. Define resolved, he said. Vacated, Ha said. Cleanly, before anyone with a camera notices Bakchin Group is renting storage space to families with children in it. And where do they go? Has shrugged, the particular shrug of a man who has never once in his life had to answer that question about himself. Not our liability once they're off the property. Sun-ho looked at the folder Minji had left open on his desk. Occupancy logs, unit numbers, names typed in a column. Nobody upstairs had bothered to read his names. His eye caught one without meaning to. Unit 214, EKG, A. He did not know yet why that surname sat wrong in his mouth when he said it silently to himself. He would know in 19 days. For now, it was only a mild, persistent itch, the kind you scratch without understanding why it was there in the first place. And he told Minji to pull the full tenant file, and he told himself it was only due diligence. It was not due diligence. It was the first thread of a rope that was already, quietly, tightening around both of their lives. He went home that night to an apartment with more square footage than Amara's entire storage building had residents. And he ate dinner alone, standing at the counter. And somewhere in the back of a drawer he never opened was an old flat iron with a cracked handle that had belonged to his mother, and he did not take it out, and he did not know why the thought of it kept surfacing anyway, over and over, like something floating up from the bottom of a lake that had been still for a very long time. 2 worlds, 19 days apart, closing toward each other without either of them agreeing to it. Amara Ikeji spent her mornings at Mrs. Cho's dry cleaners on the corner of a street she had learned to love because it did not ask questions. Hemming pants and taking in blazers for men who tipped in exact coins and women who looked through her like the storefront glass. She was good at it, better than good. 12 years of tailoring before Daniel died, a shop of her own once in Houston with her name stitched into the awning, before Daniel's contract brought them both to Seoul, and she'd folded her business into a suitcase like it was a thing you could simply pick back up later. "You do this fast," a customer said once, watching her hands move along a hemline without a single pin out of place. "Where did you learn?" "My mother-in-law, in Nigeria." "Huh." The woman looked at her the way people look at furniture that surprised them by being expensive. "That's interesting for someone like you." Amara smiled, the smile that cost her nothing on the outside and something small every time on the inside. "It's a craft," she said, "not a nationality." The woman didn't have an answer for that and left with her blazer and Amara went back to the machine and thought, not for the first time, that dignity was a muscle nobody praised you for using, only one you paid for when it slipped. That same week, in a boardroom 40 floors above a different part of the city, Baek Sung-ho sat through 6 hours on IPO logistics and heard the word optics 11 times and the word people zero. His grandmother, Baek Mayan, chairwoman emeritus, and the only person in the building who still called him by his childhood nickname, caught him afterward in the hallway. "You look like your father did," she said, the year before he stopped looking like anything at all. "I'm fine, Hermione. You're tired in a new way. That's not fine. That's a beginning." He didn't ask what she meant. She left before he could, the way she always did, dropping a truth like a stone in still water and walking away before the ripples reached the edges. He drove past the storage building twice that week without stopping, told himself it was on the way. It was not on the way. Minji noticed and said nothing, and filed it under the small growing list of things her chairman had started doing that he had never done before, driving slower down certain streets, asking after tenant files that had nothing to do with quarterly numbers, standing at his window at night instead of sitting at his desk. "He asked me today," Minji told the head of security, over coffee, in the tone of someone reporting a strange weather pattern, whether Unit 214's electricity had been shut off yet. "I've worked for that man 9 years. He does not ask about electricity." On the 9th night, Ha Jong-soo's audit team scheduled a formal notice to be posted on the second floor units by the following week. Vacate within 5 days. Company policy, no exceptions. Quietly worded so no journalist could later call it what it was. Amara didn't know about the notice yet. She only knew Mr. Go had started avoiding her eyes in the hallway, and that the 10 held 451,001 now, and that she was still 849,000 short, and that the man from corporate, the tall one, the quiet one from that Thursday night 2 weeks back, had not reported them, though she had lain awake 3 nights waiting for the knock that would say otherwise. She had no idea he had gone back to his office that same night, closed his door, and asked Minji to bring him everything Bakjin Group had ever filed under the name EKG. She had no idea the folder was already sitting on his desk, unopened, like a held breath. Which brings us back to that night at Unit 214 and past it. "Don't stop," Sung-ho said, and Amara did not stop. Because her hands did not know how to do anything except keep moving when a stranger was watching. And because stopping would have meant looking at him directly, and she was not ready for whatever was in his face. He looked at the room the way a man looks at a debt he didn't know he owed. 3 sleeping children, a tin with a dented lid, a collar folded 3 times for no one who would ever check. "This building isn't licensed for residents," he said, not unkindly, almost like an apology for a sentence he hadn't chosen the words of. "I know. How long?" "Long enough that the question doesn't help me," Amara said, and something in her voice, not fear, not begging, just fact laid down flat, made him stand very still. He should have called it in. Ha would have called it in. Instead, he crouched, picked up a hair ribbon that had fallen near the door, Zuri's, small, yellow, with a single bead on the end, and set it gently on top of a stacked box, within her reach. "Your fees covered through the 15th, he said. "It won't be flagged before then. After that, I can't promise anything." "Why are you telling me that?" He didn't have an answer that made sense yet, not one he was willing to say out loud. Finish your ironing, he said instead, and left and stood in the corridor afterward longer than he needed to. One hand flat against the concrete wall like it might tell him something about his own pulse. Mister Go was waiting by the loading dock, wringing his cap in both hands. Sir, I can explain. Don't file anything on Unit 214 tonight, Sung-ho said, or the 2 units next to it. Sir, corporate policy states. I am corporate, Sung-ho said, quiet, not unkind, absolutely final, and Mr. Go closed his mouth and nodded and understood, in the particular way employees understand these things, that he had just watched something shift that he did not have the authority to name. In the car, Sung-ho opened his phone and typed a message to Minji. Pull every file connected to the surname Ikeji. Tonight, he did not sleep. Somewhere near 2 a.m, he found himself standing in front of the drawer that held his mother's cracked, handled iron, and he did not open it, and he went to bed without understanding why his chest had that same sat down, unbudging weight it had carried out of that storage corridor. Amara, meanwhile, finished the ironing, folded the shirt into a bag for the morning, and lay down beside her children without knowing his name, without knowing his title, without knowing that 4 floors of legal and PR staff would spend the next several days quietly making sure her name never reached a newspaper, for reasons that had nothing to do with kindness yet, and everything to do with a folder that hadn't been opened. She told Ngozi about it the next night, in the careful, downplaying voice she used for anything that might worry her sister more than necessary. A man from corporate came through. Didn't report us. What kind of man? I don't know. Suit, quiet, didn't smile once. Sounds like every dangerous man in every drama you used to make me watch. It's not a drama, Ngozi. Everything's a drama when a rich man doesn't report you and doesn't ask for anything back, Ngozi said. And there was a version of that sentence that was a joke and a version that was a warning. And Amara heard both and said nothing and went back to counting coins in a tin that now held 460 2001. 3 days later, a woman named Ominji found her at the dry cleaners, holding a business card between 2 fingers like it might be contagious. Mrs. Ikeji, Bakjin Hospitality is opening a new boutique property before the end of the quarter. We need someone with tailoring experience to handle staff uniform fittings and alterations. Contract work. Paid weekly. I was told you're very good. Told by who? Minji smiled, the professional smile of someone who has been instructed to reveal nothing yet. Someone who noticed your work, she said, and left the card on the counter, and Amara stood there holding it, turning it over, feeling the strange, unfamiliar shape of an offer that did not come with strings she could see yet. She said yes 3 days later, not because she trusted it, but because 460 2001 was not going to become 1,300,000 on its own, and because, though she would not have admitted this part to Ngozi, some small, stubborn part of her wanted to know what kind of man left a hair ribbon within reach of a sleeping child and walked away asking for nothing. She met him properly for the first time 3 days after that, in an office with too much glass and not enough furniture, and the first thing she said to him before he'd even finished sitting down was, "I want to know exactly what this costs me." "Nothing," he said. "Everything costs something. I've learned that the expensive way. So tell me the price, or I walk out and you can find another tailor." He looked at her the way you look at a door you didn't expect to be locked from the inside. There's no price, he said. You do the work. We pay you for the work. That's the whole arrangement. And the notice on my storage unit. His jaw tightened, barely. There won't be one. Not while this contract stands. That's not nothing. That's a favor with a leash on it. Then, what do you want it to be? Amara sat forward, hands folded, the same steady hands that folded collars 3 times at midnight. I keep my evening pickups. My children come first, always. No exceptions. No meetings that run past 5. You don't touch my back rent, my debts, or my tin. This is a job. When I decide it's over, and nobody calls that ungrateful. Something crossed his face that might, in a man less careful with his own features, have been the beginning of a smile. Agreed, he said. Chairman Baek Sung-ho. In case Minji left that part out, Amara went very still. Chairman, she repeated, like she was testing whether the word would hold weight. Is that a problem? It's a lot of floors between us, she said, for a man who folds ribbons. He didn't answer that. But he thought about it for the rest of the day, in board meetings, in the elevator, at his desk at midnight, the exact shape of the sentence, the exact way she had noticed a detail he thought no one had seen. Her sister's voice came back to her that night on the phone, half a joke, half not. Chairman, Amara, you're telling me the quiet suit was a chairman. It's a job, Ngozi. Rich men don't offer jobs. They offer leashes with better lighting. I set the terms. They always let you set the terms until the terms stop mattering, Ngozi said, and Amara didn't argue. Because some part of her, small and old and tired, agreed and filed the warning away next to the ribbon and the folder she still didn't know existed. 2 days later, at Bakjan's flagship penthouse showroom, Amara stood pinning fabric along a mannequin's shoulder while 3 staff uniforms hung waiting for final adjustments. And Sung-ho stood nearby, doing an unconvincing impression of a man checking messages instead of watching her hands work. You don't need to be here for this, she said, without looking up. I like watching precise work, he said, which was true and also not the whole truth. Most executives send an assistant. I'm not most executives. No, she agreed. Most executives don't personally walk storage corridors at 10 at night either. He didn't have an answer for that one, and the silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable, which surprised them both. The door opened without a knock. An older woman entered in a coat that cost more than the entire uniform order, cane in hand, though she clearly didn't need it for balance. Eyes moving from her grandson to the woman kneeling with pens in her mouth and back again, cataloging something neither of them could read yet. Sung-ho, Baek Mien said, you didn't tell me we had a new tailor. How Mioni? This is Mrs. Ikeji. The old woman's gaze dropped briefly to Amara's hands, steady, precise, 3 pens held between her lips the way a surgeon might hold instruments, and something shifted behind her eyes, quiet and unreadable, like a door easing open a half-inch. Ikeji, she repeated, testing the syllables. Finish your fitting, dear. I'd like to talk to you when you're done. Amara looked up at Sung-ho, a question in her face he had no answer for. And behind his grandmother's calm expression, a memory neither of them could see, yet was already stirring. A memory that would, in a matter of days, tear this fragile new arrangement wide open. Baek Myeon did not sit so much as arrive at a chair, the way certain women of a certain age make furniture feel like it had been waiting for them. She watched Amara finish the hymn, watched the exact 3-second pause before each pin went in, and said, without any preamble at all, "My daughter-in-law used to fold like that." 3 times. Always 3. Your daughter-in-law. Sung-ho's mother. She ironed shirts in a garment factory for 11 years before anyone in this family had money enough to matter. She died before he was old enough to understand what she'd given up, so he could stand in rooms like this one. The old woman's eyes moved to her grandson, who had gone very quiet by the window. He doesn't talk about her. I mention her so someone in this room remembers she existed. I'm sorry, Amara said, and meant it. Don't be sorry. Be exact. The way you fold. Myeon rose, tapping her cane once against the floor like punctuation. I like exact people. This family has had enough of the other kind. She left without further explanation, the way she always did, and Sungo stood at the window a long moment before he trusted his own voice. She doesn't do that, he said. Approve of people. On sight. She didn't approve of me. She approved of a fold. With her, he said, that's the same thing. That night, after the children were down, in the new one-room he'd quietly arranged for her at a fair plain rate that came with a real lease and a lock that worked from the inside. No favors attached, just wages she'd actually earned. Amara cooked. Jollof rice, the way Daniel's mother had taught her, tomatoes and thyme and patience, in a kitchen that had never known a pot boil over in its life. The smell filled the sterile penthouse hallway 3 floors up, where Sungo was reviewing merger documents and Ha Jung-soo's latest audit notes. He came down without meaning to, stood in the doorway of the small kitchen, watching Kimmy taste test from a wooden spoon, watching Toby negotiate for a second plate, watching Zuri fall half asleep against Amara's hip while she still stirred the pot one-handed. You're staring, Amara said, without turning. I don't remember the last time this building smelled like something someone made on purpose. Sit eat first, she said, and it was almost his own line, said back to him gentler than he'd ever said it to anyone. He ate. He did not say much, but something in his shoulders came down half an inch, and Kimmy noticed, the way children notice these things before adults admit them, and said, You don't smile a lot. No. Is it because you're rich or because you're sad? Kimmy, Amara warned. It's all right, Sung-ho said, and thought about it, actually thought about it, the way he hadn't let himself in years. Sad, I think. Probably before rich. Kimmy nodded like that settled something important and went back to her rice, and Amara watched him across the small table and felt the ground under her own caution shift, just slightly, just enough to notice. Later, at a small reception for hotel staff, 2 junior executives spoke to each other in Korean near the buffet, low and careless, assuming the American in the corner adjusting a collar couldn't follow. She's just the seamstress. Cute, for someone so exotic, no? The first murmured. The chairman brings his tailors to dinner now? The second answered, amused. Amara set down the jacket she was pinning, walked over, and answered in Korean so clean and unhurried the whole group went quiet. The chairman brings people whose work speaks Korean better than his junior staff's manners do, she said, and picked her jacket back up and left them standing there with their mouths half open and did not look back to see Sungo. At the edge of the room, watching with something close to open admiration on his face for the first time all night. He found the file 2 nights later at his desk past 1 a.m, the folder Minji had pulled weeks ago, and he'd been too afraid, without knowing he was afraid, to open. Bakchin Tower 2, Mapo site, structural incident, 14 months prior. 6 names on the casualty and settlement list. His own signature on the authorization page, dated the night of the merger vote, one of 40 documents he had signed in under an hour without reading past the summary line. Daniel O. Ikeji, deceased, settlement authorized, 46,000,001. Actual disbursement, after a chain of deductions he had never once questioned, 3,100,001. He read it 3 times before the room actually went quiet around him. He thought of a tin with a dented lid. He thought of a collar folded 3 times. He thought of a woman negotiating her own terms across his desk with a steadiness that had nothing to do with luck and everything to do with what this signature, his signature, had cost her. He did not call her. He sat very still for a long time, the folder open under the lamp, and did not know yet how he was going to carry what he now knew into a room with her in it. The roadshow was 11 days out when Ha Jong-soo called it a board priority conversation and meant something closer to a threat. The Maple settlement file cannot surface before the listing, he said, standing at Sung-ho's desk like a man discussing weather. It's a resourcing issue from before your time as sole signatory. Manageable if it stays buried. It has my signature on it, your signature on 40 documents that night. No investor reads that as culpability. They read it as noise, unless someone makes it a story. Ha's eyes flicked briefly, meaningfully, and there's still the storage matter. 3 families, one of whom happens to be connected to the exact file you're worried about. I'd call that exposure. I'd resolve it before day 11 becomes day 2. Define resolve, Sung-ho said again, the way he had weeks before, except this time his voice had teeth in it. Vacate the units, quietly, before anyone connects a name in a storage ledger to a name in a settlement file. Tung-ho said nothing, which Ha mistook badly for agreement. That same week, at a company gala neither of them had chosen to be at together, Yoon Saren, poised, precise family approved down to the seating chart, found Amara near the coat check and looked her over the way one prices a stranger's coat. You must be the seamstress everyone's discussing, she said, smiling with just her mouth. How exotic that Sung-ho brings you to these things now. Does the alteration service extend to companionship as well? The room nearby went quiet, the particular quiet of people pretending not to listen. Amara did not raise her voice. I alter clothes, she said, evenly. I don't alter myself to fit a room that's already decided what I am before I've said a word. You should try it sometime. It's freeing. Saren's smile thinned, and she had nothing ready for that, and turned away first, and the room's silence changed shape into something closer to respect. Across the hall, Sung-ho watched the whole exchange and started walking toward her, the truth about the file finally rising in his throat where he could no longer hold it down, and his phone buzzed. An unknown number. And he almost didn't answer. And did, and a voice he didn't recognize said 4 words that stopped him cold in the middle of the ballroom floor. She already knows, Chairman. The sweep came at 6 in the morning, 3 days before the roadshow, while the sky over Yeongdeungpo was still the color of a bruise healing. Amara was not in Unit 214 anymore. She had her own lease now, her own lock, her own name on a door, but Mr. Go called her anyway, voice shaking. to say two other families had been given 4 hours to clear their things. Papers stamped with Bakjin Hospitality's own seal. Ha's people did this before Sung-ho could stop it, Go said. I heard him yelling at Ha on the phone. I've never heard him yell. Amara didn't care yet whose fault it was. She drove to the storage building, helped a woman named Yiren move 3 boxes and a sleeping toddler into her own small car, and it was there, holding a stranger's crying child. That a courier arrived, sent, she'd learn later, by Ha himself, with cruelty precise as a surgeon's, carrying a copied page from a settlement file with one line circled in red. Authorized by Baek Sungo. Daniel O. Ikeji, deceased, settlement withheld pending administrative review. She read it twice standing in a parking lot at 7 a.m. She did not cry. She folded the page once, the way she folded everything, and drove to his office and walked past Minji's desk without being announced and set the page down in front of him. How long have you known? He didn't lie. That was the only mercy left available to him, and he used it. 9 days. 9 days, she repeated. Not loud. Worse than loud. You cooked dinner with my children beside you. You let your grandmother bless my hands. You knew the whole time that your own signature was the reason I was ever in that storage unit at all. Amara, you didn't lie to me, she said, standing very straight, the way she always stood, even now. You just let me talk to you like a stranger to my own life. That's worse than a lie. A lie ends. This just sits there, under everything. She did not slam the door. That was the part he would not stop hearing for a long time afterward. The quiet click of it closing. Softer than any door had ever needed to be to do this much damage. Sun-ho canceled every meeting he had scheduled that day. He sat alone in his office, staff drifting past his glass wall, with the particular careful silence of people who have watched something in their boss go dark and don't know how to fix it. And Minji, watching from her desk, thought, not for the first time, I have worked for this man 9 years. I have never seen him look like this. The road show was in 2 days when Baek Sung-ho walked onto a stage he'd spent 11 months preparing and said something no one in the room, least of all Ha Jong-soo standing pale at the edge of the wings, had rehearsed with him. Before we discuss the listing, he said, into a microphone meant for stock projections, I need to disclose an internal failure. 14 months ago, a structural incident at our Mapo site resulted in 1 death and 2 injuries. Settlements were authorized at fair value. They were not fairly disbursed. I signed the authorization. I did not verify the disbursement. That failure is mine, and it will be corrected publicly, not quietly. The room went the particular silent that precedes a stock dropping. He did not stop. Effective today, Bakjin Group is establishing a 6.8 billion won fund to fully compensate every family affected by this and any prior undisclosed incident administered independently of this company's board. Executive Ha Jong-soo, who oversaw the concealment, is terminated effective immediately. The storage sweep conducted 3 days ago at our Yeongdeungpo facility is reversed. Every displaced family will be rehoused at company cost, with proper leases starting today. Has face in the wings went the color of old paper. Investors murmured. Shares dipped 4% within the hour, a number the board would spend weeks recovering from. Baek Myeon, watching from the front row, did not look surprised. She looked, for the first time in longer than Minji could remember, proud. Sung-ho tried to reach Amara that same night with an envelope, not cash. He was careful about that. careful in a way that showed he'd learned something, a formal notice that her family's original settlement had been corrected in full, back paid, structural. She sent it back unopened with a note in her own hand. This isn't a gift I can take from you. Not from you specifically. If it's real, it goes through the fund, like everyone else's. Otherwise, it's just guilt with better paperwork. He read that note 4 times, and for the first time in 11 days, something in his chest that had been clenched since a parking lot at 7 in the morning eased, just slightly, because it sounded exactly like a woman who might someday let him try again, on her terms and no others. She came to his office 11 days later, not summoned, not softened, on a Tuesday afternoon she chose herself. I read about the fund, she said. Independently administered. Good structure. Bad staffing. You need someone who's actually lived inside a system like this to run the family support side, not another board appointee who's never counted coins in a tin at midnight. You're applying for a job. I'm telling you the terms, she said. I run family services for the fund. I report to the independent board, not to you. My contract can't be touched if we ever, she paused, chose the word carefully, if this ever becomes something else. And you don't get to decide when I'm ready to talk about the other part. I decide that. Agreed, he said, without hesitation, and meant it more than he'd meant any signature in years. Good, she said, and then quieter, the part she hadn't rehearsed. I'm still angry. I want that on the record, too. On the record, he agreed. But I came back, she said, which means some part of me already decided the anger isn't the whole story anymore. Outside his office, Kimmy was waiting with Minji, swinging her legs off a chair too tall for her. And when Sungo came out later that evening to walk them to the car, she looked up at him with the plain, devastating honesty only a 9-year-old carries without meaning to. The kids on our old floor used to call you the Mafia Landlord, she said, because you owned everything and nobody ever saw you smile. And now? Kimmy considered this with the seriousness of a judge. Now I think you're just Sungo, she said, who happens to own a lot of buildings and is bad at smiling on purpose. He laughed, a real one, short and surprised out of him, and something in Amara's chest, watching from the doorway, finally let go of the last brick it had been holding since a parking lot and a folded page. That night, after the children were asleep, she found him on the rooftop terrace of the building she once lived 4 floors above. City lights laid out under them like something spilled and glittering. You are the first person, she said, who asked what I thought instead of telling me what I already was. I was late learning how, he said, but I learned it from watching you fold a collar 3 times in a room with no future in it. That's a strange thing to fall in love with. It's the only thing that ever made sense to fall in love with, he said, and kissed her, gentle, unhurried, certain, and the city did not stop or notice or care the way cities never do, which somehow made it feel more real, not less. 6 months later, the Daniel Akeji Family Housing Fund had rehoused 11 families across 3 districts with proper leases and locks that worked from the correct side of every door. Ha Jong-soo was under formal indictment for concealment and fraud, his name quietly scrubbed from every plaque in the building that had once carried it. Yoon Seren, released from an arrangement neither she nor Sungo had ever wanted, sent Amara a short, unexpectedly gracious note When the engagement to another family was formally announced instead, you were right about the room deciding what I am. I'm working on that too, which Amara kept, folded once, in a drawer of small, unexpected kindnesses. Bayek Mion gave Amara her daughter-in-law's old flat iron at the small, quiet ceremony that followed, cracked handle and all. She never got to see her son become someone worth this, the old woman said. You did that. Fold your life with it. 3 creases, always 3. The powder blue tin sat on a shelf in their new apartment now, empty of coins, full instead of Kimmy's school certificates and a photograph of Daniel and a single yellow hair ribbon with 1 bead on the end. Beside it sat a second tin, new, unbattered, which Amara filled herself and pressed into the hands of a woman named Yirin the week she signed her own lease with her own name on it, the same one she'd helped move out of a storage unit on the worst morning of both their lives. For the deposit on whatever comes after this, Amara told her. Not charity, a correction. Someone did it for me first. On Saturdays now, Sung-ho and Amara stood on that same rooftop with 3 children who no longer flinched at knocks on doors, watching Seoul's skyline hold its lights the same indifferent way it always had. Proof, if either of them still needed it, that being witness costs nothing and changes everything. Dignity was never something the world owed to give me, Amara said once, watching the lights. It was only ever something worth not putting down. If Amara's folded collar meant something to you tonight, I want to know, would you have taken that first contract on her terms or walked away like she almost did more than once? Tell me in the comments, because I read every one of them. And if stories like this one, about being seen exactly as you are, and what it costs someone to finally look, mean something to you, stay close and subscribe to WCH channel _name, because there's another story like it waiting next week. Fold what's yours 3 times and let no one tell you it wasn't worth the care. See you in the next story.